Like Dr. Thompson said, my name is Viramontes, third generation farmer from Deming, New Mexico. Today I decided to title my presentation, Are We Farming Plants or Ranching Microbes? And I've got a funny story about that. When I was attending NMSU, I had a horticulture class, and the final for the semester was a written essay. And I titled it, Are We Farming Plants or Ranching Microbes? So the funny thing about this is I never actually did the essay and turned it in. So if anybody knows Dr. Uchansky or he somehow happens to see this, just let him know that it took 15 years of hands-on research, but I finally have the essay. There we go. So I grew up alongside my dad, and I didn't realize how passionate I was about farming until I left to attend school and pursue a different career. Once I returned to the farm, we did things conventionally because that's the only thing we knew how. However, we had started making some changes to be more sustainable. Heavy tillage had been replaced with minimum till programs, and we had basically become 100% drip irrigated to be better stewards of our water. But microbiology was only a term that I'm pretty sure my 7th grade science teacher had forced me to look up and write a definition on. In other words, soil biology was a foreign term to me. But sometimes our biggest hurdles in life can lead to our biggest blessings. When I returned to the farming with my dad, our biggest struggle in our area was verticillium wilt and peppers. And this was the most valuable crop that we were producing. So for anyone unfamiliar with verticillium wilt, it's a fungi that attacks plants through injuries in the root system and essentially chokes the plant to death. Verticillium can also cocoon itself in the soil for many, many years until it has favorable conditions to start growing again. And the verticillium that we had is for sure a New Mexico native because it loves its green chili. At the time, the only way we knew how to control it, or what we believed we were controlling with, was a fumigant called K-PAM. We didn't realize at the time, but K-PAM's mode of action wasn't just to kill the verticillium, but it was also wiping out any biology in our soil. So not only were we sterilizing our soils, but we were not completely eliminating the problem we were after. It was just normal practice to assume we would lose around 20% of the crop each year due to verticillium wilt. The first year I grew a chili crop on my own, I used K-PAM because everybody told me I wouldn't have a crop unless I did use it. The results were as expected. It was expensive chemicals on the front end and a 20-25% loss at harvest. Season 2, I decided there had to be a better way, and I chose to skip the fumigant application and just see what happens. I remember my dad telling me I wouldn't have a crop to harvest unless I fumigated prior to planting. It was a decision, or it was probably youthful ignorance, but I stayed firm on my decision, and I helped him that spring fumigate all his chili, and I left my 1 10-acre block without. And at the end of the season, we had about 20% loss due to vert in all the fields. But the cool thing was that in my little 10-acre block that I didn't fumigate, I had the exact same result. So once we saw this, we knew there had to be a better way to do things, and that's where our farm soil health journey really began. Our biggest hurdle ended up being our biggest blessing, because without verticillium wilt, we'd probably still be doing things the same way we were 15 years ago. I wish I could say that we stopped fumigating and everything became super successful after that, but that's not how life works. In today's social media atmosphere, it can be easy to fall into that mindset, as most social media influencers only post what they want you to see and not what it took to get the results that they're sharing. Our soil health journey was and is full of wins and setbacks. Still to this day, as I'm speaking to you about soil health, I'm constantly learning new things day in and day out. Each season brings with it different trials, and there are things that we as producers can't control. So today I want to share with you isn't a scientific formula on how to have super healthy and successful farming operations, but just what I've done and what I've observed through the process. The good, the bad, and the ugly. After that first year of foregoing the use of fumigation in our pepper crop, it led to the question, what now? We knew fumigants weren't working like they were marketed to us to do, but what do we do to eradicate this verticillium problem? Now enter the era of bugs and jugs. It seems as soon as we chose to seek a more eco-friendly alternative, a whole slew of bacteria-slinging salespeople started showing up at the farm. And while some products had some benefit and some were just dead biology in a plastic container, it really prompted the pursuit of soil health on our farm. What is soil biology and how does it aid in the growth of plants? Fast forward 8 years and numerous bacteria trials in Chile, and the bigger picture was starting to emerge. Adding some foreign bacteria or fungi to our soils was like putting a Band-Aid on a hatchet wound. It helped, but it didn't really stop the bleeding. We already had the biology in the soil we needed, we just needed to focus more on bringing it back to a thriving level. I've since learned that soil is a fantastic, thriving ecosystem beneath our feet, and that ecosystem is relying on the plants to sustain it. It's an invisible economy working to grow and live much like we do. The various microbes need food to live, and the plants need microbes to protect it and mine nutrients for it. The carbon-nutrient exchange really blows my mind with how much interaction takes place between plants and soil biology. Plants supply carbon to the microbiology as a food source, and in return, biology offers a plethora of services to that plant to ensure that its food source is well taken care of. If you've got soil full of biology, you've got these giant systems in place to take care of the crop that's planted. So this brings me to why I'm here today, to share with you all the things that we've done and the various results that we've observed. The biggest breakthrough we had, and the leading reason for pursuing soil health in our operation, was the use of compost teas to reduce the presence of verticillium in our pepper crop. After numerous bacteria and fungi trial products that half worked and half didn't, we were introduced to brewing compost teas. And we don't create our own compost for the teas, but rather we source compost tea bags from an outside company that uses worms to enrich the compost. We buy these bags and we brew them with molasses to multiply the biological presence in the tea before applying them through fertigation. This is something that has become a staple in our entire operation. The first year doing this in a side-by-side trial, we saw a 50% reduction in loss due to verticillium in our peppers. And I'm excited to say that year to date, with consistent applications on all our crops, verticillium well only affects 1 to 2% of our chili peppers in a season. It really has helped us boost our soil microbiology back to a functioning status. Other than greatly reducing the presence of vert in our crops, we observed other benefits using compost teas to grow and enrich our soils. The first was that in the same trial, the unapplied field turned red much quicker than the treated field, prompting the question, could microbiology aid in prolonging the shelf life of the produce? Second, we were able to reduce our fertilizer applications by more than 50%. With the reduction in fertilizer use, we began to focus more on what types we should be applying and which ones aided in the function of the soil biology. I'm not a fertilizer rep, so I won't mention any one particular company by name, but I will say that anything carbon-based seems to get you more bang for your buck. Taking the soil health systems further, we began doing sap analysis testing to be more accurate in the nutrients we were delivering to our crops and the timing in which those crops needed said nutrients. And our main focus of delivering not only nutrients, but building our biological systems at the same time. This not only helped with overall plant health, but we also began to see that certain pests could be eliminated with the use of properly timed nutrition applications. Not only were we able to save money by not buying pesticides, but we were reducing the amount of chemical applications to our fields and keeping soil health on the forefront of our decision making. I have a couple examples of this for you today. Onion production has a notorious little pest that seems near impossible to keep out. Thrip are a prevalent pest in onions, and they enjoy living in the neck of the onion and eating on the new leaves as the onions are growing. Depending on the year and the environment, we would have to make 3 to 7 passes per season to spray various insecticides to keep the numbers below an allowable threshold. Onions also love nitrogen. With every nitrogen application we would make, we would not only see the total N numbers move up, but also the nitrate numbers would follow. And what I've learned is that nitrates are like a dinner bell to bugs. So how do we keep this pesky little bug out of our onions and at the same time still supply the total nitrogen units that they need in a season? Carbon, or a sugar source, was the answer. We began adding molasses to our nitrogen fertilizers and let the soil biology do its thing. I know there's some scientific process to explain this chemical biological reaction, but I couldn't tell you what that is. I do know that adding that food source to the nitrogen greatly reduced the nitrates without sacrificing any nitrogen units in the process. For a lack of better words, this turned off the all-you-can-eat buffet sign for the insects. Also, a side note that biweekly foliar nutrient applications with heavy magnesium finishes off the remaining thrips without the need of any insecticide. This year is the second year in a row that we've produced onions without any insecticides.
Wow.
Another cool example of using nutrients to prevent pests was in our chili peppers. When the evenings began to stay warm in the early summer months, moths began to fly around at night and lay eggs under the leaves of the chili peppers, and soon they hatch into cutworms or earworms. Again, the old system of approach would have been to get out the sprayer and go knock them off with a chemical insecticide or apply a chemical systemic through the irrigation to eliminate these worms. Now, I'd be lying if I said that we did this on purpose, but one season a few years ago, I decided to forego the insecticide treatment and see if our soil health and nutrient plan would keep the worms at bay. I had been told that plants always emit frequencies, and a healthy plant's frequencies wouldn't attract insects. I decided to see for myself, and what I discovered wasn't exactly what I was looking for, but it was equally exciting. While apparently my plants were still giving off the right frequency for moths to want to come lay eggs in my field, the larvae were hatching. They were eating a very small amount of the leaf, and they were dying without any insecticides. Now, this isn't confirmed in any way, but I believe that through proper nutrition and soil biology, that the sugar levels in the plants were elevated high enough to make it impossible for the worms to digest the leaves that they were eating. I believe their digestive systems weren't able to process the complex carbohydrates that the natural sugars in the leaves had, and they were essentially eating themselves to death. Either way, we haven't used any chemical insecticides to control worms ever since. While my frequencies test in chili didn't turn out the results I was looking for, I truly believe that plants emit frequencies and healthy plants don't have the come eat me frequency. It kind of makes sense when you look at bugs and they all have antennas on their heads. I have another hypothesis that bug antennas are receiving AM/FM radio frequencies and they're jamming out while they're buzzing around all season. But I don't have any way to test that hypothesis out. What I do know is that insects are attracted to stressed out plants, and I have a prime example of this. We began playing with cover crops in our pecan orchard about 7 years ago. The orchard is on a micro sprinkler system. We were having trouble with runoff water pouring out of the field and not penetrating the soil where it was supposed to go. And it also had a terrible issue with cotton root rot and was killing quite a few trees a year. Of course, at the time, it was heavily sprayed with herbicides to keep the weeds out. And a good friend of mine and also one of my crop consultants suggested that we plant a multi-species cover crop to help retain the water in the orchard while also promoting a biology-friendly environment that microbes could thrive in. Well, it was very successful. It was very successful in retaining water. The root systems that were digested by the arrival of biology and the tunnels left behind from the worms began to flourish in the orchard. And it made it easier to apply accurate amounts of water to the trees. And not only that, but the Texas root rot began to suppress itself. Also, we suddenly stopped needing to spray for aphids, a very persistent pest in pecan production. Now, I know you might be thinking that's cool and all, but what does that have to do with plant stress frequencies? Well, one season, the cover crop became infested with nutsedge, and it was preventing the sprinklers from watering efficiently. The nutsedge is a tough weed to deal with because if you chop it with a spade, it just grows right back. So against my better judgment, I decided to have the whole cover crop, nutsedge and all, terminated with herbicides. I thought I'll just kill every living plant in the orchard and then replant a new one once the sedge is gone. The trees never showed any visual signs of stress from the herbicide application, but we went from not seeing aphids in 2 years to a full-on invasion within 7 days of that herbicide application. And I fought aphids the rest of the season. And I swore I would never kill my cover crop in my orchard again. And as a matter of fact, I haven't terminated another cover since that year, and we haven't had to spray aphids again. I truly believe that the presence of soil biology in a living cover is vital to the health of my orchard. And I believe that while the herbicide I used that season didn't cause the trees to show any signs of stress, it stressed them out enough to emit a new frequency that attracted all those aphids. I love the idea of cover crops, especially multi-species cover crops. Cover crops. And after having success with them in the orchard, I wanted to incorporate them into the rest of our operation. And this is where the ugly comes in. The disclaimer, I'm only speaking about what I've tried and what I've seen. I've heard of other producers all over the country having success planting into dead covers and using that as a ground barrier to keep weeds from growing. By using a no-till drill system, they essentially plant into a dead or terminated cover and don't have to use herbicides. And that's what I was after too, not using any herbicides. Well, I've tried it numerous times and I only seem to be planting my own weed problem each time. I know this is probably not the place to say this, but I've screwed up more fields trying to pioneer a no-till chili and cotton program that I have time to share about. Whether it's a spring planted cover that we chemically terminated or a fall planted cover that dies in the first frost, I always get the same results. A cash crop in the middle of a thriving cover crop. Although as frustrating as it's been, I do believe using more multi-species covers is an essential part of promoting soil health. I just have come to the conclusion that having them in an unused field might be more ideal than trying to plant into them currently. I'm still playing with different covers on the farm, but I really think that they play into production is in off years. UV rays are soil microbes' biggest destroyer, and in our climate we have more than plenty of sunshine to sterilize a fallow field. In our area we use wells to pump our water into our drip systems, and with it we're only allotted so many acres to use for production each year. I really believe that the benefits of the covers is in keeping the soil ecosystems alive on those off years by shading out the ground and supplying a food source rather than just leaving the field barren and fallow. This last fall I planted a 12-way cover after onion harvest and was able to take it full term before the first frost. That's it. Actually, that's it right there on the left side of the screen. But rather than trying to plant the chili directly into it this year, I tilled it under a month before we planted. And the results have been amazing. And that video is not playing. We took a soil sample shortly after planting the chili seed to see what the biological activity was. So this was supposed to be a video, and it's probably my fault that the video is not working, but in the video, it's just buzzing up and down, left and right. There's just little things all over the place, and it's fascinating. And this microscope revealed a thriving network of microorganisms, and they were just hustling and bustling throughout the sample. And this was just in about a tablespoon of soil, so you can imagine the super network that's alive in the field. If we can keep these networks thriving 12 months a year, then that would really be pushing the bar on soil health. Not to mention all the water retention we can have with our few and far between rain events in our climate. So I've given you all a short summary of my soil health journey to date, and it's one that I've truly become passionate about. While my long-term goal for our operation is to be zero pesticides used, I assume you've gathered that we still use pesticides in our operation. With that being said, we have moved from using pesticides as a preventative to more of an as-needed approach. Focusing on our soil health has helped our operation to greatly reduce the amount of chemical pesticides that are applied each season, but it's still not zero. While I really enjoy pursuing the regenerative practices and figuring out ways to utilize them in our operation, I'm not 100% regenerative. If I had to give myself a title, I would call my style of farming conventionally reganic. I truly feel like there is really great practices from each farming method, whether it be conventional or organic or regenerative. And it seems like taking the best practices from each one of these is the way to grow not only our operations, but the ag industry as a whole. Conventional farming, I feel, gets a bad rap all the time because of the pesticides that are used, and while I do feel that pesticide applications aren't good for soil biology, and sometimes the surrounding environment, it is the most scalable method that has blasted food production off into another level, making affordable food accessible globally. Organic farming is the exact opposite. While being ultra environmentally conscious, organic production is not easily scalable. Without the USDA adding more and more approved organic pesticides to their list each year. But it does have a great plethora of practices, and it has excellent marketability. Regenerative ag is the newest concept to the farming world. Like organic, it's great for the surrounding environment, hyper-focused on soil health. Building soil biology to levels that sustain the crop with little to no added nutrients. I do feel like certain climates make it hard to incorporate all the regenerative methods though. No tilling is difficult in arid environments, and animal grazing is not allowed in certain food production like fruits and vegetables. There has to be balance between all different methods of farming. Soil health is essential because without it, you wouldn't be able to grow anything. But so is profitability, because without funds you can't operate. So I say this as I close because in recent years, there's been separation in the farming world based on which method you choose to utilize. Social media fuels a fire of which is better, which is more sustainable, which is safest and healthiest to consume. And I feel like if we're going to take food production to the next level, we need to put all those biases aside and learn from one another. We need to talk to each other and find out what works and what doesn't work. What can we do to improve our soil health, improve our profits, and improve our environments all at the same time? So I encourage all of you to stay open-minded as you pursue your own soil health journeys, whether it be directly on your operations, or as researchers, or as extension agents. We're all in this together to make farming as a whole better for the next generation that will inherit it. And it all comes down to having healthy soils. Because healthy soils equal healthy plants equal healthy food equals healthy people, and healthy people equal a healthy world. Thank you guys, that's my